let's begin now. 360.
I woke up this morning and I said, you know, waiting for a good day to happen, you know.
Good morning and welcome to Coffee with Toffees. We got a little music going for you guys to help you wake up and get started, and then I'm joined here by Gorgon the Wonder Cow. We're going to talk a little about the news of the day. Before we do that, enjoy the Nappy Roots.
What the children saying. Take the day off, hit the park and just hang. Barbecue, roll a few and put up the deuce. And if it's beef, put the piece down, throw up your dukes. It's time to change our ways so we can save the day. For the children's sake and make a better place to play. If it's all good, we got your coupe and grip your wood. And if you're riding dirty, like to split and blow you. But do it real big, exactly like a player should. Enjoy your 24, do your thing and rep your hood. The world is all yours, but still we all grind forever. In the day, the choice you make is really all fine.
We're gonna have a good day, and this is the start of it. Good morning, rise and shine, wake up, or if you're in your car or at work, I'm glad to be joining you today. My name is Toffees, as always. Glad to be here. This is the second episode of a brand new morning show that we're trying out to see if people enjoying it or are interested, and so far the response has been great, so we're going to keep on bringing you some good content. I'm joined today by a special guest here in the studio. You may know him, you may have heard of him. He's one half of the Road to TI5 team. It's Gorgon the Wonder Cow. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing pretty well. I am not a coffee guy, but I'm sitting with my milk tea and feeling pretty strong.
All right, so it's coffee with toffee and milk tea with cow. That is not too shabby. So that said, basically for those of you who are joining us for the first time, or maybe watching the show for the first time, it's a pretty simple format. We are going to talk a little bit about the news that's going on in Dota, the news happening in gaming, and the news happening in the actual world. A little bit of a back and forth about it. We're on Twitch Live, so if you have anything that you want to say or you want want to chime in, you're more than welcome to. We've got the feed up on the stream, so as you talk, so does the world, and it's pretty exciting as we go through that. And like I said, if people like it, if the response is good or overwhelming or even just strong, I'm gonna spend the next week working on the format and putting together a way that we can really get you guys involved, whether it's Skype conversations, etc., etc. So that said, I guess we'll talk. Usually I like to start out with some Dota 2 updates, and we'll kind of mix it out from there. So news in the Dota 2 world that I think is probably the biggest thing going around is Fnatic, for those of you who haven't heard, and what's going to happen to them regarding the TI4. So for those of you who don't know, what happened is, I'll pull it up on the screen so you can actually see. Join Dota did a pretty good story on it the other day. Era is been sick for a while now. If you guys watched the Beyond the Summit, you'll saw that Excalibur was standing in for them. And what we know happens is that when he travels, he gets very, very intense anxiety. And from what I heard in another article that I read over on Liquid, is that he vomits. He cannot be away for very long. In fact, last time around, they flew him out with his girlfriend and his family, and he still got incredibly sick throughout the process. So the big fear is, what is Valve gonna do? They found a stand-in. They're willing to use Excalibur. The problem is, according to Valve, the 5 that register are the 5 who have to show up in Seattle. So no one knows, but it looks a little bit like Valve may not let Fnatic come to TI.
Yeah, I mean, it's looking a lot like Valve may not let Fnatic to TI. They've been really hard-lined, and with the exception of the physical injury that we had on EG, they've been very, very stern about the fact that they are not letting trades, they're not letting stand-ins, they're not letting ringers, they're not letting swaps, they're not letting any sort of situation change the invited team. So if your team can come as invited, great. If your team can't come as invited, well, we'll see you next year. They've been... I mean, they did it all through South America. Just about every South American team that was invited wanted to use a different player than the invited squad. And probably, if we had seen that Ben Haas IO swap that was looking like it was going to be the case for a little while, potentially, we very well might be looking at a South American team in TI this year. As it is, we don't have that. So I'm sure all of the South American Dota fans are like, well, just let Fnatic rot. Like, we didn't get somebody in because we weren't allowed to coalesce our best players. Why should they be allowed to make changes either? But
and I completely see that side. I think that the general the general consensus among a lot of the folks, well, the Reddit army, if you want to call them that, is the idea that Era is probably, it's not an amalgamation of great players, because Era is one of the best players in the world.
Yeah.
More importantly, it's a question of why Fear and not Fnatic. And I can tell you, the reason that is being discussed, and I think it's probably what they're discussing now in the back rooms at Valve, is from the get-go, from the day that Sad Boys was signed by EG, from the day that they started talking and working their way towards being in TI, and from the day that TI even contacted them, they said Fear has an injury, and there's a very real chance that we're going to be using Mason instead of Fear, unless Fear can recover in time. And because that was started out from the get-go, TI was ready for it. That said, though, Fnatic has made it very clear that they've spoken with every tournament down the way, and that everyone has known that Era had a health issue that was becoming worse and worse throughout the time period as well. Now, I don't know which way it's going to go. I prefer to see Fnatic in the Gate tournament. They're one of my favorite teams, so I want them there. That said, though, I didn't know anything about this inability to travel that Era was suffering from until the news story broke a couple of days ago.
Well, they were trying to keep, I mean, especially for Era, this is a really personal issue.
That's a good point, yeah.
This is a psychological issue. It is something that is embarrassing, if not shameful, for a lot of people. It's really difficult to talk about psychological problems that you have. Like, I have obsessive-compulsive disorder, and I hid that from people that I know for most of my life. I spent a good deal of my time trying to not show that I have obsessive-compulsive disorder. As a kid, I also, I had outbursts of Tourette's, and I did everything I could to hide that. Because it's really difficult to come to terms with the fact that there is something different about you that is in some way preventing you from being like other people psychologically. So why would he want to make it a public thing, to have his personal life scrutinized because I mean, he plays a video game for a living. It's not his job to become a public face of, you know, agoraphobia or whatever it is. So I can totally understand him wanting to make it completely secret.
Yeah,
and the fact that he came out and said anything at all, like publicly, in order to try and make sure that Fnatic has the, you know, I mean, the only reason they would release that story is so that the public opinion would be on Fnatic's side. And the fact that he was big enough to say, you know what, I will be forward with the public, especially like the esports community, about this psychological issue that I have, so that my team might be able to move on, should probably show exactly how serious of a situation this is. Like, nobody chooses to not go to TI. It's not like he's trying to sandbag or something. You know?
I think the fact that his family even was willing to fly out to the last tournament to try to remedy this is a pretty good sign that it's not like they're trying to get out of something. It's an issue of what is really a major problem mentally. So, I mean, that said, don't want to beat a dead horse. I'm sure we'll be talking about the story a lot over the next couple of weeks. But that said, just so you know, TI is in consideration as to whether or not they're going to drop Fnatic. What that means for the overall tournament format is also question up in the air. So it's actually a much bigger story, I think, than it looks like in a lot of ways, because this changes formatting, this changes invites, this changes a whole lot of things. And I'm sure they got their hands full already worrying about who's going to get their visas.
Right, that's the other thing. Right. Go ahead. But
I was saying they don't want to deal. I mean, this is a whole nother aspect. So I don't think that it's the right choice for them to bring in another difficulty level for themselves. But that said, you break the rules once, you're going to have to break them over and over and over again.
Right, so CIS now had their second round of visa applications denied. So the whole thing with Fnatic is, if they let Fnatic through and they let EG through, are they going to let CIS take stand-ins? Because they're all now being forced to apply for their visas separately. Which means that 4 of them might make it and 1 of them might not. 3 of them might make it and 2 of them might not. If that's the case, and if Valve can't do anything to convince the government, the US government, to allow these individuals to be brought in as athletes on that P1A visa status, you know, the CIS is going to have a much stronger case if there are 2 teams using a stand-in for their own. Like, it's a legal issue. We have no control over it. You're not going to let us compete over a legal issue? So they have that entire level to deal with as well. Like, they lose a lot of their strength in telling CIS that they need a full team if they've already let 2 of the, especially the fact that they're 2 of the Western teams, and you don't want to seem like the organization is biased against Eastern teams, which is how it's going to look. It's going to look like they're biased against Eastern teams and South American teams, and they are biased against those teams and toward the Western. Biased towards America, they're biased towards Europe, they're biased toward areas where white people come from, because they keep giving those people breaks and they keep not giving breaks to South Americans and Asians. So it's a whole bag of worms.
Absolutely. So for those of you who are maybe curious about that, what we're talking about, I pulled the story up on the screen as well. CIS was denied visas again, and they, like Gorgon just brought up, they have to apply individually. We're starting to get worried as to whether or not they're actually going to make it in. It's interesting. Actually, I think Gorgon wrote the post, so that explains why you knew so much about it.
That is what I was doing last night instead of sleeping to prepare for Coffee with Toffees. I was up making sure that posts are ready for that and watching all the news and getting the CIS stuff out. So, you know, just running Join Dota, not a big deal.
Absolutely, right? Running the site. So CIS denied visas, and that's a pretty big deal. You can't come into the U.S. Without a visa, one of those countries that is a big stickler about it for obvious reasons in its past. And if these teams can't get it, they're going to want to run stand-ins. And the big question is, how does it follow suit as far as the other stand-ins that have been allowed? And honestly, I think that what's going to have to happen is, my personal opinion, they're going to allow some stand-ins in these situations because they've already done it with Mason. And it's going to be very hard for them to say, well, EG can do it, the U.S. team, the team that represents the country where we are based, and not you guys. And I think that that's going to be the real stick that they're going to have to stand by. That said, it is really hard to tell.
There is one major distinction between the Mason case and all these other cases, and that is that Mason has essentially been a 6th member, has essentially been slot 6, as many teams have, especially like the Asian clubs have a slot 6 and a slot 7. He's essentially been part of the organization for a long, long time. Like, he's been he has been their staff stand-in for as long as EG has been a remade team. So there is that aspect to it. At the very least, it's it's almost like they invited EG as a 6-person squad, and one of the people couldn't make it. That being said, that's kind of a cop-out, I think. I don't know. I have mixed opinions on it. I can see where Valve would come from to deny the stand-in stuff, right. But I think in this particular case where we're talking about the top of the top, you really just want the best competition you can have. And if the best competition you can have involves letting a pub star come in, like, that's a great narrative in and of itself.
It is. I mean, the Excalibur narrative in Beyond the Summit was phenomenal.
Yes.
We all watched him play one of the greatest Meepo games in the history of Dota in a lot of ways. His micro was mind-numbingly good, and that's somebody we never even would have heard of. So it is. I think it is, and I think that you're right. That TI is about the best of the best and the best competition available, especially with the prize pool the way it is. And to cut someone loose because of a visa issue really means that China gets underrepresented, and that it feels like a slight to the general group of gamers who come out of that area.
Yeah, I really want to see Excalibur become this year's Admiral Bulldog, right? Because last year, Admiral Bulldog was this player that he met through Dendy in a pub and ended up getting pulled in, and he played with Loda a little bit, and they ended up throwing him on. And in my opinion, last year through this portion of the season, Admiral Bulldog was the most valuable player on Alliance, moving into their victory. And I think Excalibur could have a very similar sort of, narrative. I love to see that sort of narrative creation in esports. Is one of the reasons why people like esports. It's one of the reasons why we have the potential to compete with actual, like, sports, like traditional sports, is because we have the potential to create these narratives as well, just like sports do. But not if you always stomp them out because you're trying to get the cleanest possible format for your tournament. I don't know. I feel like the other thing is Excalibur, as a member of that team, because he brings a fresh perspective, has been helping that team change the meta a fair amount over the last, I don't know, what is it, 3 weeks or so?
Right, yeah.
So that's good too, mixing things up right before the international, because you're taking somebody who was not in the pro scene and throwing them into the pro scene and seeing what they do to the way that players understand the game. Right. Makes a big difference to the way that the international is going to have diversity, and it's going to be a lot of fun if you allow that sort of, I don't know, non-unilateral thinking to occur.
Right. No, I agree with that completely. So that said, let's just put it this way. I think Valve is going to do the right thing. It's up to them, and I'll support them with whatever they decide, obviously, because they make the game that I know and love. That said, though, let's hope they open the doors to keep teams like Fnatic, fan favorites who have ground it out for years trying to earn the chance to be here when esports gets big, a shot at that $10 million prize pool. So
we're about 200,000 away from 10 million right now, by the way. Like, it is probably going to hit it today at the pace that it's been going.
Yeah, I think that's almost a guarantee. So it should be. Sorry.
Did I say 200,000? I should have said 2,000.
Yeah.
I should have said 2,000. I had a couple decimals off there.
That is quite all right with that. So we'll talk real quick. Next thing that I want to mention from Dota news before we move on to our next thing is CIS is starting up, and I think it's about 22 hours right now. Or ESL. So ESL is going to be up and running. It's going to be a huge tournament over the weekend, and you guys are probably all going to watch it. This is the last big lead up to TI, so it's our last chance to see what these teams are bringing to the games. It's going to be a very good one, so we'll be talking about that just a little bit later. But do you have a favorite for taking home the ESL?
Oh, I don't have a favorite at the moment for taking home the ESL. I guess if I had to pick one, just kind of running through the list, I'd probably say that Evil Geniuses looks like they're the strongest in this petition. I think they have an easier bracket because Na'Vi they are coming back into form-ish, but they haven't really been in form this season compared to what we have known historically. So that's their first round. Their first round, they're going to end up going against Na'Vi. They should be all right with that. Their next round is either Vici Gaming or Fnatic. It'll probably be Fnatic if I had to guess. And I think Evil Geniuses has that match as well. That'll bring them all the way up to the finals. So I think they have an easier run than maybe the Alliance, Cloud9, Mouseforce, and Victus Gaming. I feel like those teams are all a lot closer. I feel like Evil Geniuses is probably, I don't know, a little bit more far away at the current moment their general bracket region.
Yeah,
so.
They just came off of a good win. They've represented themselves very, very well in the last two tournaments. D2L was theirs. And I think I'm with you. I think that it's going to go EG over at Natus Vincere, which I think is going to be a pretty That's going to be a massive game. For those of you who are interested in watching it, it's on in 20 hours from now. So actually, if you go to, they've already put them up on the Join Dota as far as the stream links are concerned. So 20 short hours away, you do the math. And I'm going to say 20 hours so that you can do it in your head without time zone worries. And
the other thing is, over at JD, we are going to be live vlogging all of those matches. I'll be taking the grand finals, which is a best of 5 on that Sunday. It's going to be 17:30 CEST. But we have a lot of other great senior staff writers and writers who are going to be taking the non-final matches. So the semifinals are going to be handled by Sonata and Morantix, respectively, and then all the quarterfinals are going to be handled by our general live vloggers that we have covered these sorts of things. So if you are not able to watch, if you are not able to listen, but you do want to make sure that you're catching up, pop open your phone while you're at work every now and then, take a glance down and see what's going on, because we've got a real nice live vlog format going on.
Absolutely. That said, it is worth noting that it's actually starting earlier than I thought it was going to be. It looks like
Saturday, 11:30 CEST is, I think.
Okay, is that Saturday at 11:30? So just over 24 hours then. And that 11:30. Oh, so that's what we're looking at here with the time. So it'll be 11:30 for the first game, and then keeps going from there. 13:30, so on and so forth. And the games are just gonna come one after another. So get involved, get there, watch the games, and it should be pretty good. And I'm pretty excited about those matches coming down the way. And if you want the schedule, it's on Join Dota, as you can just do the drop down on their match ticker and literally find out what time every single thing is going to be. I imagine those games will start running long, especially once we run into things like firewall issues. But at least that's a great place for us to get started. So that is rough Dota news for the day. We'll come back to Dota in just a little while, but I feel like it's important that we talk about some news updates, actual news updates. We'll chat a little bit about that.
Then we're real world?
Like the real world, and then we're actually going to talk about, I'll give you a heads up on what's on the Steam sale for the morning and the afternoon so far, and then after that, we're going to talk about a exclusive that we've got, where we're going to talk about SNA, the Sneaky Nyx Assassins, and a roster change that they went through recently. Not overwhelmingly publicized, a change, and they dropped Whitebeard from their roster and are looking at picking up some new folks. So I've got a report that was sent to me this morning, bright and early, by Emil Davia, an ex-JD staff writer who is now a freelance writer who will be providing stuff for the morning show from time to time. And she gave us the inside track, so we're going to save that for last, because inside tracks always get to go last. That said, let's make the transition over to the news and talk about the 5 things that I think are going to be important for you all to know today. So, where did I put it? I had the list written down. It is...
I didn't realize I was supposed to know things about the real world. For
the
this.
real world. No, that's fine.
I was just supposed to know things about like the stuff that, like Legoland is something I know a lot about. Pokemon comics. Every now and then I like to talk about the commercial with the owl, the Tootsie Pop commercial. I know a lot about the Tootsie Pop commercials and the various incarnations of those. I don't know a lot about the real world, though, is basically what I'm saying.
Don't even worry about it. Like, that's my job. I will bring it to you. I just want to hear what your opinions are. You get to play the viewer, so you get to give us your responses to what's happening in the world if you feel like it. I just want to do it quickly because I feel like it's important. We don't ever focus on that. We spend all of our time on Twitch, and it still is important to kind of know what's going on around us. So, 5 things that I think you need to know for your day today. There is an ongoing story. Some of you have heard about a toddler who died in Georgia. The father is now officially being charged or investigated for murder, basically. Long story short, a toddler was in the care of his father. His father put him in a car seat, drove to work on a hot Georgia day, and left him in the car while he went to work. Now, that is what we would call negligence or criminal negligence. It's not actually murder. What makes it murder is the fact that he came back to the car, it looks like, at least twice during the day, and put things in the car as if he forgot his briefcase and never noticed the child. Didn't actually report any issues until after work that day when he pulled into a gas station frantic about his child who was no longer breathing. The other thing that's a problem is that police yesterday seized his computer, and they found searches on the internet that were things like, how long does it take for an animal to die in a hot car? So we're pretty sure that he will not be coming back out of that holding cell.
Yeah, that seems like a pretty reasonable criminal charge. I don't know what else there is to say about it.
No, and there's not much else. It's just something that's been in the news a lot. People are talking about it because it started out as, oh my God, did you hear what happened to this poor guy That's what happens when you let a dad take care of a kid. That's what happens when you don't pay attention. And now it turns
Jokes
out
about kids dying.
exactly. And now it really is something where it seems like that was an intentional choice. So
I'm actually spending the 4th of July down in Georgia. I'm leaving on Saturday, and I actively plan on sitting in a car all day and seeing how long it takes me to reach the verge of death, just to see if it was a reasonable amount of time.
I imagine it is not very long, to be completely honest with you. So that is something that's being talked about. Second, and perhaps my most interesting thing I'm most interested in was yesterday, is the idea that the World Cup, if you watched the U.S. play Germany, they did lose to Germany 1-0. However, Portugal beat Ghana, which means that the U.S., for the second time in 8 years, advances to the knockout stage. This is a big deal for a couple of reasons. First and foremost, we've made it out of the knockout stage before, but it's always one good year followed by one terrible year when it comes to U.S. soccer, and this is the first time we've done it twice consecutively. The other big deal is that Ghana has knocked us out of the tournament the last 3 tournaments running, and this is the first time that we have effectively knocked them out by better performances. So we tied Portugal to get there, and we lost by 1 to Germany.
I like how you specify by better performance. Like, we've knocked them out of the tournament plenty of times by invading a country or dropping bombs or something, but we've never outperformed them.
We've never outperformed them.
That's crazy to think.
We walked away with a tie with the number 3 team in the world in Germany. We lost by 1, but they're ranked in the number 1, between the 1 and 3 spot. Portugal and Germany tend to kind of rotate around in there. So it's a pretty big win for the U.S. soccer, and it means that we get to play it again on Tuesday at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, if my time conversions are correct.
That's EST.
And EST, and it should be a pretty, it actually should be a fairly easier, a much easier game than anything else we've played before. So if you guys are around, tune in for that, because it is going to be the talk of the town. The U.S. suffered or had amazing amounts of missed work yesterday. They said it should just become a new national holiday, as we sold the most tickets to the World Cup. If you guys didn't know, for countries, the U.S. bought the most tickets to watch the World Cup, and we are the second country behind Chile for absences at work during World Cup games. So yeah, it's growing. It's a thing where it's not a big sport, but when you can watch the U.S. Get that pride and go sit at the pub and sip a pint, it's a great thing to do.
I think honestly, any excuse for Americans to go to the pub and drink a pint, like, sure, well, whatever.
So third, there is a Supreme Court ruling yesterday, the president's appointment powers. The Supreme Court sided with Congress yesterday in a high-stakes power struggle over presidential recess appointments, in which officials get to top government jobs temporarily without Senate approval. The justices unanimously ruled that this isn't okay and could invalidate a lot of decisions by a federal agency. So long story short, when a post opens up in a high position, as far as government jobs are concerned, right now the president and the powers that be are allowed to appoint someone to fill the job until it goes through Congress, so that it's taken care of. Now, the argument that Senate makes is that's not fair. We're supposed to approve the positions, so you can't just do that. The argument that the president was making is, hey, it takes you 2 years to do anything. I can't have a position vacant that long. The Supreme Court says get over it, and they side with Congress. So what that means is a lot of the things that have happened over the last 2 years while we've had a completely hung Congress may get negated or reversed, because a lot of the people who have been in power aren't allowed to be there anymore.
Yeah, so for anybody who is not an American in our audience, who does not understand how the American government works, the Cliff Notes for that is nothing happens ever.
Yep.
So Cliff Notes of this is the Supreme Court has officially ruled that nothing happens ever.
So, and that's exactly it. They put the kibosh on pretty much anything that moves quickly.
Kibosh, man. I want to say this in the cast the other day. You have added that to your lexicon with a fury. I was watching you cast for, while I was streaming the other day.
Yeah.
I was just listening to you. And I think it was like 14 times or something, one game, kibosh. He's going to put the kibosh on him. He's going to put the kibosh on her. They're all going to get the kibosh.
Well, you got to have catchphrases, I guess. I'm sure it'll fall out. It'll fall out of my lexicon. They always do. It's like the absolutely that we trained out of our lexicon.
Yeah, that was a phase in our existence that doesn't need to be relived. Absolutely. Let's move on to story number 5.
Story number 4 and 5. Number 4 is the Ebola outbreak. So in the West Africa, the Ebola virus has reared its ugly head again and is at unprecedented levels. And the World Health Organization is taking drastic action against it, or saying that we need to, sending out experts. But it is becoming a major issue. So there's not a lot of news on that, other than the fact that holy shit, people are like literally getting themselves in a ton of trouble. And there's a lot. Ebola is a pretty scary thing. For those who don't know, it distorts limbs. It's all nasty. It's all terrible. And it's something that we thought was for the most dead. So this outbreak is becoming an issue, and it looks like it may spread to other countries. So we'll keep an eye on that, as I believe the whole world will. But it's important. I think it's one of those things that you may be at the water cooler and someone will be like, hey, what do you think about the bird? What do you think about the Ebola virus? Kind of like the bird flu a couple years ago.
Yeah, thus proving that just about dead is not the same thing as dead, and probably shouldn't be considered so in any sort of context.
And to tie that back into what we do, it's a lesson you learn in Dota. Just because someone drops to about 25 HP doesn't mean they can't turn back around and burn your face off. So Ebola virus, much like the margin playing monsters of Dota.
Fortunately, I don't think there's ever been a case in Dota, except maybe for Era, where Dota leads directly to vomiting and diarrhea.
Absolutely.
I think the Era is unique in that specific.
So, and the last big story is that the suspected mastermind of the deadly Benghazi attacks in Libya just arrived in American soil today. So he was brought over. He's going to be interrogated by the FBI and the CIA. I'm sure that'll go really well for him, and then potentially go in front of the bigger court circuits here in the U.S. for those of you who don't know. So that's pretty big news for us.
Him being subpoenaed in front of Congress 14 times about whether or not Hillary Clinton knew about the Benghazi attacks.
And that's the big one.
Like, I'm super happy that they caught the guy. Like, obviously, he's a criminal, and he's a war against humanity or a crime against humanity and whatever. And her Americans, I don't like that. Nobody likes that. But like, also, it's like, oh, they caught him, and now we can open up this big charade again, and instead of focusing on something that's important, we're going to talk about Benghazi. So
absolutely. So it'll be interesting to see how that pans out. And then obviously for those of you who are history junkies, a quick, more up note. Well, I guess not really an up note.
There's something up note. There's nothing up note in history ever, Toffee. Right. History is grim.
It's on June 28th in 1918. So this day in history, the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, not the band but the man, sparked the beginning of World War I. So if you're going in, you want to talk to a history today and make them feel make them feel proud of you, just mention, hey, I heard today's the anniversary of the assassination in Sarajevo, and it was a pretty big, it's what they call, for those of you who don't know, the shot heard round the world.
Yeah, so I don't want to kibosh your today in history, but it's the 27th today, so that's great for the weekend.
Damn.
That's great for around the water cooler with your family when you're mowing the lawn and your neighbor comes up and says, hey, what'd you do today? And you say, like, oh, I didn't do anything, but a while ago a guy assassinated a dude at a sandwich shop. That was cool. And that was World War I, sandwich shop assassination. I feel like that's what they should have called it. They called it the Franz Ferdinand assassination, but I really think sandwich shop assassination is much better. It just sounds better.
Absolutely.
The alliteration is good.
I'm not famous anymore. And apparently Shia LaBeouf went on the news circuit last night, or the media circuit last night, with guest interviews with paper bags on his head. So he's going crazier and crazier, and that's all I really need to know about him. So
the only thing I know about Shia LaBeouf ever from like anything is that he was in that Indiana Jones movie that made me cry, and that he's an actual cannibal according to a song I saw on the internet. And that's all I know.
That's all you need to know.
It's probably great, dude. I have no idea.
Quick update for you guys, just so that you know if you're driving or if you don't have a chance to check. Steam sale for the day today, since that's the big event that we're all excited about, is we've got 5.5 more hours basically before the transition over. And I think Resident Evil 4, the Civ 5, and Rome 2 are probably the biggest things posted on there.
What? Over Left 4 Dead 2? Come on. Left 4 Dead 2.
That's just, everybody already has Left 4 Dead. I mean, that's just a game we got.
That game sucked my life away like zombies.
Yeah.
Like, really, I used to play that game. There was a Christmas break at uni where I played that game for 12 hours a day on Xbox Live with the same group of like 20 people just rotating through. It was really pathetic, really, when you think about it. But like, I used to love that game. So, you know, if you get Left 4 Dead 2 and you send me a tweet, I will probably play with you. Like, because I don't play anymore. I don't know anybody who plays. Yeah. But that's how desperate I am. Like, here's a public call. If you tweet me, like, will you play Left 4 Dead with me on your stream? I probably will.
Nice. I think we're playing Borderlands 2 tonight, aren't we?
Yeah, I think tonight with the Phage guy, we're going to be playing Borderlands 2 on stream over at twitch.tv/gotcow.
So that'll be a pretty good time, so make sure you guys stop by that, twitch.tv/gotcow. Yeah. Also, quick touch, so Civ 5, I'm a big 4Xer, which is, for those of you who don't know, the strategy, the turn-based strategy kind of games, and that is the greatest game ever made in that genre. That said, though, if you like simulators or challenges, Banished is probably one of the better games I've played as well. I don't know if you've had a chance to play that yet, but it is you basically build a micro community from scratch, and it's things like if you don't harvest enough food for winter, you start to have people starve, and if somebody starves and spring comes around, you don't have enough farmers, and there's not enough food production for the summer, and it's just sort of like things can crazy spiral out of control. It gives you a good feel for what it takes to actually manage something like a town.
So, and if you like games that will completely play themselves, but simultaneously make you feel inferior and confused, Europa Universalis 4. Yep. It will do all of those things, because I own it, and I went in to play it with like a group of 12 guys who convinced me to buy it while I was on sale one time. Went in to play it, and not a single person there could explain to me how to play the game, but they were all somehow playing. Nobody knew what was going on. The world was just managing itself, and we were like watching it. It's like a very, very slow news simulator set in the like 1700s. It's crazy, yeah.
That's pretty hilarious. So that's that one, and then now on flash sale for the next 5 hours, I got Prototype 2, which I thought was a terrible game. Watch Dogs, which is only 20% off, so it's really not worth talking about, but a good game for what it is.
20% off a fairly new game.
That's true.
I mean, that's a pretty decent deal.
That's true. It's nice. I prefer it on the Xbox One just because I can sit on the couch and like veg out to it. It's not the most difficult game I've ever played. That said, 2 games on the community choice are really nice. Skyrim at $4.99, that's 75% off. One of the greatest games, I would say, of this decade. People would probably be willing to argue with you and say that that is correct. So if you like fantasy, great game. And then LA Noire, an underrated game from earlier in the decade that I think is really, really good if you like those sort of adventure, strategy, investigation style of games.
Yeah, I don't. I mostly play things that I can get really unnecessarily obsessed with in terms of trying to defeat an opponent. I don't really have the attention span for one-player games. Like, I can read a novel, but I can't play a game by myself for some reason. I used to when I was a kid. I can play, like, platformers, because you can play those in four minutes at a time, and then I get, like, I chase a piece of string or something, because my attention span is terrible. The fact that I can cast Dota at all, like, I can pay enough attention to a game that long, is astonishing, quite honestly, if you know me personally.
It's just so much happens. So, and the other big thing that's this summer sale today is going to be on the Treasure of Rubeline Sheen over in Dota. So if you want that chest, you can pick it up for 49 cents. It's one of the older ones. It's got a couple of interesting hats, and the Ark of Manta pack is probably it. The paired weapons for anti-mage, and the Obsidian Golem, which was that popular golem that was used with Warlock for a long time. So those are probably the 2 best items in that set, I think, but you can pick it up right now over on Dota for 49 cents for the next 5 hours if you want to try and get some cheap items that you can probably turn around and put on the market if you get the right one. So that is the basics as far as what's available to buy right now, and that brings us to the topic that I think is going to be the most interesting today, and that is what happened to Sneaky Nyx Assassins. So, for those of you guys who don't know, Sneaky Nyx Assassins is a TI qualifier team who came out of the US, really showed some beautiful play, and I think I would rank in the top 4 teams in the US right now. So, in the US, we've got EG, who is unequivocally number 1. Number 2, we've got Liquid and NAR, who are both going to be fighting for their chance to play in the main event. And last but not least, we have SNA. Now, Sneaky Nyx Assassins, according to a report that I got from an ex-staff writer from JD, who works freelance now. She spoke with the team, and Whitebeard is no longer with them. You guys may remember Whitebeard from some of the most exceptional disruptor play I have ever seen in my life.
Some of the most exceptional support play you see at all. Like, I mean, Whitebeard's a good player. He's a really good player, and I never saw any indication that the team wasn't getting along with him, but I'll let you continue. reading through, because apparently that's not the case.
Yeah, and that's so it is unfortunate, and basically what we found out is the report I've gotten from Emma is that Whitebeard was considered to be a little rather bad-mannered, and and what he likes to do is, according to her and the reports that I get, he likes to call out teammates on bad plays and choices in a less constructive way. So he's a very passionate player. We've all played with them before. Why the hell would you go there? Instead of, hey, next time let's do it this way. So
yeah, if I had to guess who on the team was doing that, it wouldn't have been Whitebeard, because
No.
he always seemed really mild-mannered, and there are players on that team that do have a bit of a reputation for being hard to work with, like Ike's, Mike, and Fluff and stuff, both of whom have a history with pro teams being a little difficult to work with. So I'm just kind of surprised that out of all the players on, I mean, Ush and Snaw are both absolute sweethearts. You can talk to them about anything, anytime. And obviously, Ice, Mike, and Fluff and stuff are both pretty good guys, and they're really, really good at the game, and they fit really well in the team. But Whitebeard was always really quiet. I have him, I mean, he's online right now. I have him on my friends list. He's always been nice to me. He helped me out one time. He put me in touch with Beyond the Summit when I needed to grab some passwords for a tournament, and Join Dota administration was totally checked out. So, like, I've never had any problems with him. He always seemed like a nice guy to me, but people change when they're playing, man. People, there is a you and there is a Dota you. And I will be the first to admit that I, too, get a little ornery as Dota me. Like, I've gotten in arguments with my girlfriend and stuff as Dota me before, you know?
Absolutely. Dota me is tough. And so basically, long story short, they think the pressure situations of TI4 caused him to really lash out. They got into some pretty tough games that they should have won that they lost, and vice versa. And it caused a breakage in the team. So shortly after the qualifiers, Ush contacted Join Dota and had them remove him from the roster, and the word was it was interpersonal issues. So they've got Lust running stand-in. If you don't know Lust, he plays in the IXDL and the NEL a lot. He is what we call a North American pub star, very, very strong player, and I would not be surprised if he takes the place and starts to work with them in a more of a long-term situation. So some other folks were asking about Fluff and stuff, how he's never at the SECS Thursday night games that Sna uses for practice. That's simple. He has a girlfriend, and it's date night. So date night is Thursdays for him, much like when it is not the summer. IX Mike has classes usually on Thursday nights, so neither of them come to ECS. That said, if you want to watch them, they are almost always there on Sunday for the SECS series. So
yeah, I like to give those two, like, I like to bust their chops a little bit, like, oh, the big guys who used to play with Liquid aren't coming out to the $20 a piece tournament. Why do they not want to come out? Are they too good for us? But, like, people have real life shit to do. They can't show up for every little tournament you throw, and especially the fact that guys that are literally third place in their region for the international qualifiers, those guys are showing up for a $100 tournament. Like, that is communing with the I don't know, the Dota scene in a way that most players at that skill level simply won't do.
Absolutely. So it's you can still see them, but don't think that they are leaving the team and the team's falling apart. It is healthy, alive, and well, with one roster change in the form of Whitebeard. And over the next week or so, I'll probably... So for those of you who don't already know, I'm going to be traveling a lot next week, as is Gorgon, ironically enough. And I won't necessarily be able to get the morning show up every day. I'm going to still try to do some updates, but it really depends on whether or not the potato of a laptop I travel with can do it. If not, however, over the next week, I will try to get some feedback from Whitebeard and the guys so we can have a little more of a detail or perspective from him, since this is the information we're giving you is from Ush's contact with Joint Dota and what we've seen in the rosters. Whitebeard has not commented on it. I haven't seen a lot of Whitebeard around lately.
Like I said, he's online now, but he's not active. He's not doing anything. I think he's just sitting on his computer, so he's not asleep. But I mean, and it's worth noting that Sna and Ush, I think it was Ush, but nobody from Sneaky Nyx Assassins has, like, to me or MLDavi or anybody who is now or has formerly been associated with Join Dota, as far as I know, they've not slandered or libeled anybody. Like, all they said was, it's interpersonal issues, we're just not quite meshing right. Right?
Exactly.
I mean, that's not saying that they don't like the guy. That's just saying that they don't the team isn't coordinating correctly, right? So that's all it means. And it's really not a big scandal. It's one of the reasons why we never put it up on Join Dota. It's like,
and you got to remember,
tier 2 teams have this happen.
And you got to remember, it's important that if you're going to be playing with a team every single day and practicing the amount that the Sneaky Nyx Assassins does, if there's any kind of personality conflict, for any reason, it can really compound itself just on raw time spent together. So that said, I will be reaching out to Whitebeard and just kind of checking in with him and saying, hey, I want to make sure that, you know, we know a little bit of what's going on so that when I get asked about it by the viewers constantly, you guys have the right information. But I give you what comes up, and that's what we have so far. So that's the information for you guys. And that's about all of that's your news for the day. There's nothing else that I think you really need to know as you go out and about. Dota 2, you got it? What's the push?
It's just, you missed that, so I'm going to mispronounce his name. I believe it's Satoru Iwata was reelected as Nintendo president. That's a big video game thing. Like, we're doing general video game stuff.
Yeah, what do you got?
That's a big story.
That's why
they called a meeting to elect a president. To elect a president, they reelected him because he's been doing a pretty decent job.
Okay, so
there you go.
So Nintendo will continue to follow along in the 3rd or 4th place position as far as relevant video gaming companies.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they did dip, like, I want to say something like 20. I was reading an article about this. They dipped about 15% maybe, 15% in market share over the last year alone. So maybe not that good of a job over the last year, but in terms of the long-term haul or whatever, they've been doing all right. This is not their generation, to be sure. The Wii did very well, though. So.
Yeah, the Wii did really well. I remember when it came out, everybody was rushing to get them, and then no one ever played them. So it was interesting to see where they go from here. They're up against some next-gen consoles. Their next-gen wasn't the greatest, but it's Nintendo, so I'm sure that whatever they choose to put together in form of like the Zelda franchise will force us to go out and buy some next-level or next-gen consoles so that we can play it. It will probably be worth every dime, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I don't even think that it's a problem with the console. From what I hear, the console's actually pretty fun. It's just like nobody knew it came out. Like, there are people who still don't know there's a next-gen Nintendo thing out, and it's been out for like a year longer than all the other ones.
The release was really bad.
Yeah.
That said, one of our viewers is saying that they won E3, so I didn't get a chance to watch their E3 press conference. I guess because I've sort of written them off as fairly irrelevant in the mature gaming content.
Well, I mean, they won E3 in that they had their thing already out, and that they were talking about first-party platform. Like they were talking about software. They had all this great software to line up because they already had their console out. They assumed everybody already knew all about the Wii U, which nobody did. But I mean, obviously, the Xbox and the PS, the PlayStation, whatever, they're all focusing on the hardware that they're going to release, and it's really hard to quote-unquote win E3 if all of your basic titles for your brand new hardware is absolutely like, here is a 2-minute clip of a game we're hoping to make in the next year. You know, you can't win that.
So that said, that is there any other news that you thought that when you were looking around today, you saw that you said, hey, that's pretty interesting?
That was about it. I mean, there's a lot of interesting like little gamer things, but it's not hugely relevant, you know what I mean? It's just like, oh, I hopped on Kotaku and there's like 9 things that caught my interest, but
absolutely. So that is about our half hour. We don't want to go too deep into it because we want to make sure that that you guys have time to go about your day and get other stuff done. That said, I appreciate you being here, Gorgon. Hopefully something we can do in the future, and we're going to try to pull in any guests that we can find. So pro or not, or caster, or anyone who is wandering around when we do the morning show is going to be sucked into this, I assure you. If you like the show, let us know. We're doing it on a trial basis. If people like it, if they listen, if they look at the YouTubes, and they say, hey, this is a great idea, we enjoy it, then it's going to be to the drawing board. I'm going to take the next week or so to write up some formats, some screens, put out some loads, so you're not just watching a screen cap of my monitor while we're doing it, and we'll probably put in some videos, etc. as the time goes on. So that said, that's what we've got for you guys today. I've got any last words from you before we sign out here, Gorgon?
No, just if you know, whatever, you like the show, make sure you follow and subscribe and all that crap. Go ahead and hit me on Twitch at GotCowDota, and follow me on, or that's Twitter at GotCowDota. Follow me on Twitch at GotCow, where I'm going to be streaming a little bit later with the Stats Man, that Phage guy, and I believe Toffee's as well, doing some Borderlands. I've been trying to stream a lot more because I had a lot of fans that were like sending me passive-aggressive notes over various social media, like, why don't you ever stream? We don't get to know your personality and stuff. We just hear you casting all the time, and you write for Join Dota, and that seems like all you do. Because it was all I do, but now I'm streaming, like, every day. So stop by, please, and make my lonely existence something that is slightly more notable on the meaningful international web devices with computers.
Yep, so do that. Follow the man. Come and join us tonight. It looks like Emma will be joining us too, and we're going to be having a four-person
I thought her
stream of
potato
Borderlands.
computer couldn't handle it. Like
We'll
last
find out.
time I talked to her potato computer crashed.
All I know is I'm not carrying her leggy ass. So if she shows up and starts skipping around the screen, she is dead dunzo. That said, though, stop by the stream tonight. We'll be doing some gaming together, and it'll be a great time. That's a great point, Phage Guy. We're $300 away from the 10 million mark on the compendium, so gaining
It was 2,000
quickly.
when we started, so literally over
That's
the course of
insane.
this program, it's been $1,700.
So by the time that I finish playing you the out music today, you will have a chance to see the $10 million mark. If that happens, we'll throw up some fanfare. That said, though, guys, we're going to put it up on YouTube. Tell your friends. If you like the show, make them watch it so that we know that we should continue to make it. So that said, follow me at Toffees_Dota2. That's where you can find out about the YouTube links as well as the games. And we're planning on being here every weekday, sans next week, as I'll be traveling, and I can't guarantee it'll be a weekly thing, but it'll give me plenty of time to work on the format. That said, we're going to sign out with Good Morning by The Kicks.
I took a look and your book, I read a few lines and I was hooked. I didn't know love before I met you. I was a mess, I must confess, the long black hair and the long black dress. I think I was blind before I met you.
This in, we've officially hit the 10 million mark. It didn't even take the song. We're at $10 million and 109, so this is officially the biggest esports event in history right now. And you're a part of it because you, like us, love Dota 2. So congratulations, enjoy the music, and just think about how badass we are, changing the face of esports forever.
Across the lines, I made you cry. I must have done it 1,000 times. I guess that love is just a mountain. All the things running through my head, all the things I wish I'd said. I'd be a fool to think that I could ever let you go. With you, oh, with you.
It's time to go outside and face the day. You guys have a wonderful afternoon. This is Toffees, as always, out.